I'm Jay Taylor with Warren Berkeley. We're reading friends. We love to read books. We like to talk about books, and we enjoy getting people excited about reading and especially reading the Bible. Warren and I have a guest with us today. Warren, who's with us?
This is Mark Hinds. He's been preaching for about 20 years. He's at the Parkway Church in Corpus. His wife is Melanie. He has two grown children, John, Mark, and Jenny. I think I've known Mark for about 20 years, and I know him as a Christian and a good Bible student, a good writer, and he has entered into the world of publishing in a big way to the great benefit of readers and Bible students. Mark, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to chit-chatting with you.
All right, well, Mark, we want to thank you for joining us today. And one of our goals for this program is to encourage people, young and old, to develop reading habits. And we've observed that many avid readers developed early reading habits. So tell us something about your early reading habits.
Okay. I guess I became interested in reading religious materials because my mom worked at the Florida College bookstore. And so I would hang out there and look at a lot of the materials that were there. And she got me some books early on that really helped me to kind of get started. And I think that may be a big part of why I enjoy reading a lot of religious material. So something that relates to one of the publications I did is A.T. Robertson's Harmony of the Gospels. And I just really enjoyed that. But reading is a great way for me to talk to people who are a lot smarter than me and have conversations with them, so to speak. And I just enjoy reading for the information. Novels and whatnot. I like reading other kind of literature too. Because you learn how to be a better writer by reading a lot of literature as well.
You just mentioned that reading helps you become a better writer. How has reading fit into your work as a preacher? Maybe what are you reading currently? What books are you reading? Tell us about that.
Okay. Just constantly reading. That's just a big part of what I do. And I like to study. A great tool that I use is Logos Bible software. And I've spent more money than I'd like to admit on books, digital books. And at some point I started trying to get rid of my print books and realized, you know what, I really prefer the print books. But Logos Bible software, they call themselves Faith Life. And I know y'all are familiar with them. But they've made it easy to access with their app. Books. I think a lot of times what people want to be able to do is do searches on commentaries and whatnot, and that's great. I just like sitting down on page one and starting to read, and you get to hear a lot of why an author wrote a commentary in the first place, what's going on in their thought process, and I just enjoy reading. The older I'm getting, I'm pushing 50 now, I'm starting to forget things. And that's disappointing. I don't know. Maybe it's age, maybe it's stress, but I guess I need to keep putting more information in my head so that so that I don't forget everything or relearn things. But reading has always been a big part of what I do in preaching. I've actually been preaching closer to 25 years, and years ago, when I first started as a preacher, I was in Louisville, Kentucky. The bookstore there, drawing a blank on the name, but I'd go there frequently. And David Key, we would recommend books, and that really helped get me started buying books, print books then. But reading is just a great way to be able to expand your mind and start thinking critically. At least that's how it's been for me.
Mark,
but
tell us.
You read a lot of folks, different styles, different ways of writing, and that helps me. And I say, hey, they express that very well. What's also neat is when you get to know some of the authors and you go back to reading their material, or you hear them teaching or whatnot, and you can kind of hear their voices, their individual voices in the way that they write. That's very interesting too.
Thanks, Mark. Tell us how the formation of the book, The Big Picture. Tell us what that book is about.
It's an overview of the whole Bible. It's not intended to be very, very thorough. It's just a skimming. The original subtitle was, I'm trying to remember exactly how I worded it, but it was for adults who were new to the Bible. People who, for whatever reason, as kids growing up in the church, they weren't serious about Bible study, or they came to the Lord late in life, and now they're ready to learn what they have to learn in order to expand and really develop their Bible study. You got to know the basic facts. And that's what this was intended to be. It was for people who are adults who are new to the Bible. To my amazement, it's been used in high school, junior high, homeschooling. That's kind of neat, gratifying. But I've talked to a lot of adults who said, oh, this is what I needed. And that's very, very gratifying. It's not anything deep. It's just some simple reminders. It's got lots of dates that are key to knowing, and so that you can kind of get a framework for when other events happened. I kind of looked at this book as an update to Bob and Sandra Waldron's History and Geography book. In fact, Brother Waldron was one of the people that read the early draft, and I was very nervous about it. I was at the FC lectures when I talked to him, and he doesn't know, he didn't know me real well, but we had friends who knew him very well, such as Leon Malden. And so I talked to Brother Waldron and told him what I had done and what I wanted. And I said, I need you to be very critical. And he said, oh, I will be. And fortunately, a lot of the conclusions I drew about some different things, he happened to agree with. He gave me a glowing review. In fact, his blurb is on the back. And I was on cloud nine for a long, long time. And he was very, very supportive.
That's great, Mark. I was able to get a pre-publication copy, and I went through it with another man here who was interning with me at the time, and we really enjoyed it. And it really helped him and helped me in regard to the timeline. I think that's a sticking point for a lot of people. You know that the Bible has some Moses, some Abraham, some prophets and all that, but putting that in a concise timeline, you've done an excellent job with that. Jay, have y'all used this book?
Yeah, we've used this with individuals, and I agree, Warren, this helps people see, and the title, The Big Picture. And it's great when people can see, oh, this is where this puzzle piece fits. This is where this puzzle piece goes. And it really gets a lot of people focused on what the Bible is all about. So we use this with individual studies, new converts, people who are wanting to know more about the Bible. And so we appreciate the good work that you've done, Mark.
Well, thank you. I'm going to tell you about the origin of the title. One night, my wife and I were chit-chatting and said, I got to come up with a really good title for this book to kind of capture what I'm trying to do here. And I threw out 2 or 3, and she said, how about The Big Picture? And I said, I got it. I know what I'm going to call it. I just thought of this, The Big Picture. So it was actually my wife, Melanie, who came up with the title. And the subtitle was changed by 21st Century Christian, the publisher. And they have just been fantastic to me through the years now. So I didn't mind the change in the subtitle. They pretty much let me keep everything else. They changed the size of the book a little bit. But 21st Century Christian have been fantastic to helping me promote this book and get it out there. So originally it was specifically subtitled to help adults who were new to the Bible. but I do like the subtitle as it is, A Guide to Learning the Bible Story. It's got a continuity from beginning to end, as you all well know. The crimson thread that runs through the Bible is Jesus in his sacrifice, and how everything's pointing to that up until it happens, and then everything's pointing back to that. And I just want, in fact, part of the book, the idea was every chance I had, I wanted to emphasize the work that Jesus had done and how everything was looking to him and everything emanates from him.
So Mark, some books, you buy them and you read through them individually. Sometimes you use them in class. Sometimes books are suitable for a group study. In what category would you put the big picture? Okay.
It's a reference tool. That's why I spent a lot of time to make sure that there was an index. I wanted a really good index. I paid a professional indexer so that it could be a useful tool in that regard. And we were running out of space, so I had to reduce the font size a lot. So hope folks are able to use that. I think it's good for personal use. It's got 15 lessons, and so there are 4 pages of questions. And so it's a great way to reinforce what you learn. I don't like trick questions. I don't like silly, well, I shouldn't say I don't like silly questions. Sometimes I do. I don't like questions that are kind of pointless. They need to reinforce what you've learned. And I tried to do that. And at the time, my daughter was, I guess about 10, 11. And I figured if she could answer the questions, I was pretty safe. The way I worded them, she'd grown up in church and she knew a lot of the answers. But the questions are vital. So if you're looking at 15 pages, that's 60 pages of questions. 15 lessons, 4 pages of questions at the end, multiple choice, things like that. Questions are a great way to reinforce what you learn. And I try to make it as easy as I could.
What is the teacher's supplement?
It's really not labeled well. It's simply the answers. That's all. It's nothing more than the answers to the questions. And I think that was kind of a promotional idea. It's really inaccurate to say it's got extra information. It doesn't. It's just the answers to the questions.
Okay, so from the big picture, we're going to move on to another publication that had a first volume and a second volume. Mark, tell us about Amazed by Jesus.
It's in 2 volumes because it was just getting too long. And if adults are going to use it in classes, lugging around for a year or more, perhaps, 1 volume, that seemed kind of dangerous. It's going to fall apart or something. People have used the big picture, and they've started using this book in Bible classes at church, of course, but also with ladies' Bible classes, to be more specific, and homeschooling. So the 2 books are about, all 3 of them are about the same size. Volume 2 ended up being a little bit shorter. But these are intended to help guide you through all 4 Gospels together. If I had a preference to study a Gospel, I would rather it be one Gospel. I'd rather study Matthew as Matthew without looking at Mark, Luke, and John. I would like to study Mark without Matthew, Luke, and John. But this is intended to, because it's a useful study, looking at all 4 Gospels together. And it presents a picture of Jesus' ministry. As you know, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, they don't talk about 4 Passovers. And John, at least 3, but I do think he's talking about the 4th Gospel in John 5. That's disputed. But that lets you know Jesus' ministry wasn't just a year or 2 years, a Galilean ministry, and then he went on to the cross. It extends out to 3.5 years. And you get that because of all 4 Gospels being pieced together. And Amazed by Jesus emphasizes throughout the book how people responded to him Mark's gospel in particular really emphasizes those concepts of marveling or being amazed at Jesus' miracles, at what he said. People had the same verbs are used to describe people's response to Jesus casting out demons as his preaching. And I think that's pretty neat. And I wanted to bring that out. And that's where that title comes from. And of course, the subtitle is referring back to the series. That's what we've got now. We've got a little series going, the big picture of the life of Christ. And it was actually Milton Curry who suggested that subtitle.
To our viewers, we will have links underneath the video of how you can order all these books. Talk to us a little bit about ordering, Mark. Where can they get these books?
A number of ways. Amazon, it is available through Amazon, and Truth Books has put that out there on Amazon. There's no charge for shipping. Andy Alexander has been great at One Stone with the first book, and Amazed by Jesus. He has promoted it. I'm extremely appreciative to our brothers in Christ who are supporting our publications. The FC bookstore has it, but 21st Century Christian also has the book, and they're able to discount it. I don't know if some of the other bookstores do, but if you buy so many copies, you can get a discount off the retail price. So
right now there is no Kindle version, right?
No, sir. Because of the layout, it's full of charts and maps and pictures, artwork. It's not really conducive to a Kindle version or an iBook version, unfortunately. And 21st Century Christian, they have not really ventured into that at all with their other publications either. So I tried to look into it myself, and I knew just enough to get in trouble and didn't program very well, but it's not available in any other resource except the print book right now.
Okay, Jay.
Well, Mark, we appreciate these books. We believe they're beneficial, and we want to encourage people to add these to their libraries. And summertime is just the great time to maybe start their journey with the big picture of the Bible or Amazed by Jesus. But tell us maybe some of future works that you have planned. What are you doing?
Well, it was actually the original editor at 21st Century Christian who said, hey, what you need to do next is the life of Christ. And he has since retired. And 21st Century Christian is saying, okay, when's Acts coming out? And I guess that would be the natural next book. And I imagine if I do it, that it'll be 2 volumes, and we'll divide 1 through 12, then 13 through 28. Something else that I try to emphasize in my personal study and teaching and in these books is the literary qualities of the Bible. And there's so many connections between Acts and specifically the Gospel of Luke. And I would want to bring those out to show how, yes, obviously Acts continues the story of all 4 Gospels, but there's so many connections between Luke and Acts. And a next volume would emphasize some of that. For example, and I mentioned this at the very end of volume 2, where we're getting to the next volume. We're kind of pointing to what's next. The parallels between Jesus and Peter and Paul, especially. Paul being arrested in Jerusalem in the temple, undergoing trial, the high priest mistreating both Jesus and Paul. That's just the hem of the garment, of course. But it's very exciting to see in the last 30 plus years in literature, in the research by scholars that they're looking at, and they're seeing the significance of the literary qualities of the text, and parallels that are made between Luke and Acts would just be part and parcel of that kind of study.
Well, we want to encourage you to keep on producing good material, and we'll just look forward to that. But you mentioned your personal study just a moment ago. We always like to talk about Bible reading. That's where we want to just end most of our broadcasts with. We want people to be reading their Bibles on a daily basis. So tell us something about your daily Bible reading habits. Do you have a certain plan that you use, a time of day? Tell us about that.
Okay. Any plan that gets you reading the Bible is great. I say that because I'm going to be a little critical of a lot of plans that I've seen. You're reading a chapter a day. Well, I don't think Matthew intended for us to read Matthew in 28 days. Matthew was intended to be read collectively together. And I know it's a little longer than some of the other Gospels. Make a long story short, I prefer to read whole books of the Bible as quickly as possible. I've developed a plan over the years, since you ask, and I call it Holy Bible Reading, WHOLLY, because the emphasis is on reading whole books of the Bible, and to kind of build confidence, to build a sense of accomplishment, I guess is what I mean. We start with Paul's letters, reading them in chronological order. So Galatians, whether Galatians is early or not, I go ahead and start with Galatians because it takes you a little over 20 minutes. And what I have done is in my developing plan that I'm working on, I like to break down Bible reading into 20-minute segments, but based on how the books flow, not necessarily following chapters. We're going to read these many chapters every day or whatever. So Galatians, you read it in one day, in one sitting. Me reading out loud. I've timed myself 2 or 3 times reading through these books, not trying to be quick about it. And so I'm saying if it takes me 22, 23 minutes to read Galatians, somebody else surely will do it quicker than that. But you're able to read out. I read out loud. That's what I prefer. I read out loud. I try to, and it helps me with my Bible reading in the pulpit too, and in Bible classes. Bible reading is just very, very important. I know that's just a precursor. You need to study the Bible. There's a big difference between reading the Bible and studying the Bible. But first, you got to read it. You got to know it's there. And I've developed a plan on the New Testament that you read the New Testament in 3 months. Here's the caveat, though. You only read one gospel. So each time you'll change a gospel. Luke's the longest of the 4, Mark's the shortest of the 4 gospels. But you're able to read each gospel within a certain time frame. And so in a 3-month period, you will have read 24 books of the New Testament. I think that's a pretty significant accomplishment. Within a week, you've already read 3 books, so to speak. They're letters. And I think that's just important to see the continuity of Paul's letters chronologically as they develop. And then you move on to the general letters. You go to the book of Acts, you read a gospel and then you read the book of Acts. And I guide people through that. What do I mean by that? I made audio recordings and I used remind.com. And I did this as a program with the church. So people could sign up and every day they would get, or sometimes it would be 3 days a week to give people time to catch up. I guess I'm telling you more information than you want to hear.
No, this is good.
But I built in catch up times for people if you fall behind. You know how a lot of times people will say, oh man, it's February and I messed up, or it's March or April and I messed up. I'll just wait till January of next year. I know people do that sometimes, or we think that way. No, who cares about the calendar? Just start reading. And that's what's so important. So I want people to be part of a program that they can start and stop. But it's 3 months so that it gives you a sense of accomplishment. Genesis through Deuteronomy. That's a lot of reading. And you're going to be reading mostly 5 days a week, 20 minutes each day, almost every single day. But you can read Genesis through Deuteronomy in 13 weeks, in 3 months. You go on to Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings. You read those 4 books together, and Ruth, and you can read it in 13 weeks. And I think sometimes people don't realize how easy it is to read the Bible. Doesn't mean you're going to understand everything that Leviticus is saying. You're reading it though. You're getting it in your head, and you begin to see connections, especially if you have a guide, somebody who's kind of leading you along and saying, here's some things to look for in today's reading. And I have enjoyed doing that. I haven't promoted it much, just done it within the congregation, but I've gotten some good feedback from folks.
I think a lot of people who are watching this will be interested in this plan. Is there a place we can find this? Do you have a website?
I'm working on a website, and I haven't told you all about this, and it's called, you ready for this? You writing it down? BigPictureSeminars.com. And it's under the umbrella of the big picture, but it's pitiful right now. I've just gotten started. And I hope to have a series of videos where somebody can log in, they can create a username and a password for themselves that's unique to them, and they can progress through the videos where every day or however they want to do it, they can listen to somebody giving them a 2-minute simple synopsis of that day's reading. And you might read just a few chapters or one chapter. I mean, it's not only one chapter, but imagine reading the major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations as well, Ezekiel, Daniel, in 13 weeks. And somebody guides you through that and say, here's some key concepts as you're reading, some connections. Do you remember we read this 2 weeks ago or whatever? And I hope to make that into a video series. So it's not ready right now. I could make a PDF of the New Testament series and make that available for folks who just want to see what the plan is. And I have it laid out for the New Testament, but it's called Holy Bible Reading, WHOLLY. And I have a New Testament edition ready if people want to see that.
Well, here's what you've done. You've made a commitment.
Can we go back and erase this?
No, we don't do retakes. So
Yeah.
people are going to have expectation now of everything you've just talked about the last 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Mark, we thank you so much for being with us. You've done a tremendous service to Bible students and Bible readers and Bible teachers, and we want you to stay in touch with us. Let us know as these things are produced.
Okay.
And we'll get you back on in the future. My thanks to my co-host, Jay Taylor. We're always planning and thinking about future episodes, and so we'll be back. And please check out the previous episodes at All About Books. We'll put the link under the video, and we'll put the link to Mark's books under the video. Just keep reading.
Amen.
Thanks, folks.